I met my husband right after I graduated college. I was a flight attendant. We traveled the world together. We had some fun. We decided to go ahead and get married. And unfortunately, after I had my daughter a week before her second birthday, he passed away. And I was faced to deal with grief in addition to celebrating and trying to keep forward and move forward for my children. I'm now seeing that glimmer of light shine as we speak now. I'm just getting to a point where I am able to breathe and accept and heal and be okay.
Hey everyone, it's Antoinette, and we are at another episode of My Will, which is Montalvo International Women in Life and Leadership. I'm so excited because this has been a really special series. We've transitioned to a brand new series called Mind, Body, and Soul, and we are definitely going to be maybe hitting some pretty deep areas of the soul. We know as women in life and leadership, life is not always easy. If anything, it can be very complicated. So stay tuned because this episode is going to be an important one, and I know you're definitely going to be touched by it. All right, we'll be there. So hey everyone, it's Antoinette, and we are having another episode of Montalvo International Women in Life and Leadership, or My Will, where the mission of My Will is for your will and my will to match up with His will. And we know that there are so many things that we experience as women that can really impact us in a drastic way. And as a part of this special Mind, Body, and Soul series that we've transitioned to, I have a really just amazing and important guest. I've gotten a chance to do some cool interviews with my sisters, which has just been a huge privilege for me. And this one particularly is very special for me because my sister-in-law, Shagara, is going to be sharing her journey through marriage and widowhood. And it's a bold step to take this direction, but just getting a chance to hear a little bit of how she's processed and just being able to understand how to process the grief, the loss, the things that occur in our lives. I commend her for being bold enough to share and to be courageous in the process, and to be able to find a way to bless others, and hopefully as an opportunity to continue to heal her own journey. So Shagara, hey, how are you?
Hello, I am doing well.
Thank you so much for just offering your voice, your journey. As we've talked about before, I do not take this lightly by any means. I know it's a big step to put your journey out there. So I thank you in advance for being willing to press into this place, especially for this series, and knowing that it's not just about doing another podcast recording, right? It's about really touching lives and hopefully providing a place of healing, not only for yourself, but hopefully for someone else's too. So thank you so much, Shagara.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. And thank you for allowing me the chance to express what I've gone throughout this journey. And hopefully it can be an inspiration and a motivation, encouragement for someone who is going through something similar.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, just as a preference for the listening audience, this may be a pretty emotional topic. So I encourage you, if it seems like it's getting too much for you, take a pause, step. Maybe there's things that you've encountered yourself. We don't want to open up old wounds. We are really looking for this to be an inspiring healing process. And I say that for you too, Shagara. Again, this is going to be just a special episode. So I'm thankful for the whole thing. So just to try to dive in a little bit and really set the pace, maybe you can share a little bit about yourself, some key areas of growth that have shaped your life, and just a snapshot of what marriage was like for you and has been for you, and now kind of in this process of being a widow.
Sure. Okay. So I'm Shagara, and I have 3 beautiful kids, and I was married for almost 9 years until, unfortunately, my husband passed away. Growing up or into life, I met my husband right after I graduated college. I was a flight attendant. We traveled the world together. We had some fun. throughout my years as a flight attendant, we decided to go ahead and get married. And then everything happened so fast. We had our first child, and then we took a long pause and had the last two kids kind of back to back. And unfortunately, after I had my daughter a week before her second birthday, he passed away. Mm-hmm. And I was faced to deal with grief in addition to celebrating and trying to keep forward and move forward for my children. And that was a tough balance, but at the end of the day, I hope people understand that there is light at the end of the tunnel. It's not going to be overnight. It doesn't take place week one, year two. I'm going into, this is my third year as a widow. And I'm just now, of course I'm grateful. I'm blessed. I thank God that he's favoring myself and my kids. But as far as me being able to say, I can see the light at the end of the tunnel, I'm now seeing that glimmer of light shine as we speak now. I'm just getting to a point where I am able to breathe and accept and heal and be okay.
Yeah, no. And I appreciate hearing that, especially too, just hearing it from your perspective, right? Because there's a lot of things that we all had to deal with as a family, correct?
Correct.
And no one knows how each person is going to be impacted, but I know, firsthand that the person who is the closest, right? The one who's in the home, the one that's there, that one sometimes is the deepest of all. Many times it is. And I can also think back to that day, and I can think back to even just, the pending celebration of your youngest's birthday, and just everything that wraps around that, the mix of emotions that come with it, the mix of how do you celebrate and how do you mourn at the same time. And so it's not an easy task by any means. And I know you have had to take some specific steps to even, as you said, get to a, some type of place of acceptance, which can change for many different people. And I think, as a disclaimer for the listening audience, if you yourself have gone through loss or grief, everyone has their own timeline. And I think it's really important to recognize that you don't have to necessarily match up your timeline with someone else. You might be saying, wow, she can see the light at the end of the tunnel a little bit at 3 years. I'm going on, 5, 6, 7 years, and I'm still trying to get it together. Or, as I'm sure you will share, year 3 feels okay, but I don't know what year 4 will feel like. And not in the sense of in fear, but just in the sense of it's a process, right? It's a journey. It's ongoing. And I think it's important for everyone to recognize that you have to be mindful of you. And I think that's just the important lesson, especially within this series, that, we are all very multifaceted beings, and we're all going to be impacted in different ways. And those ways that we're impacted may be sooner, later, at different times, just when we think we all have it figured out. And maybe sometimes it just takes a little bit longer. But I want to set the audience up maybe a little bit of the love story, because I think that's important to hear in addition to how you've processed. And I think it's beautiful to preserve that memory. But what drew you to your husband? What attracted you guys?
Yes, absolutely. And what you just spoke on was dead on. My year 3 may be someone's year 9. My year 3 may be someone year 2. It just depends. There is no race when it comes to grief and healing at all. And so there's no timeline. It just takes your own pace and your own time. But when I met my husband, my name is Shagara. And like I said, I met him right after I graduated college. I didn't know what I wanted to do, so I moved back home for a short period of time. And my very first day on my new job here in Jacksonville, I met him. And from that moment, I thought he was the most handsomest man, but he always would call me Shagara. And that was a pet peeve of mine, because my name is Shagara, and he did that on purpose. And I was just definitely torn, I did not want to speak with him. I was just not interested. He was very persistent. He gave me his phone number one day. And of course, it went straight into the drawer at my job. I didn't want it. I didn't care. But months later, I had a change of heart. And I remember I just sent him a text message. This is when texting kind of became popular. And I sent him a text like, hey, what are you doing? And we went from there. We our relationship blossomed, and I think it was beautiful. It was magical. We quickly got engaged. I became a flight attendant. Like I said, I traveled the world, and he was by my side. And we visited some nice places. I remember his first time in New York City, and he was just in awe because he never seen the bright lights. He never saw the fast pace of the city because he was from Florida, where everyone's friendly, everyone's, as he says, in the country. Whereas in New York, it was fast paced. It was wear dark colors. It was don't speak with me. Everyone had on headphones at the time, and it was just a different a different scenario and scene for him and the exposure. And we just had a lot of fun together, and we enjoyed life. We got married. We had my oldest son, and from there, I mean, we just grew. Then we had the younger 2 years later. We grew as a family, but we did experience some fun times together. We would take annual trips to Disney. He worked a lot, so one of the things that we always tried to do, he wanted the idea to get the annual passes for Disney, so we can spend time together as a family. So hindsight, after his death, I tried to keep up. I've kept up with that tradition. Spend time as a family. That's our family time. We'll keep up his tradition. So that's some things that we do. But we had our love story was magical. It was fun. I definitely I smile when I think about our young days. I smile when I think about, there was a 5 year age gap. So he called me a young child, not a child in that sense, but a young because he was a little bit older and more mature. And I definitely respect and I admire, and I sometimes think about those times because it was a lot of fun. We did have fun, and those are the days that makes it harder when you allow yourself to think back to the positive memories that you had. And that makes it kind of hard to move forward. We had pictures. I used to like to take photos and document our journey, our life. And so I had pictures over the house of him, of us. And I noticed and realized that held me back from healing with the grieving process. So I had to remove those photos in order for me to be able to move forward, because I would find myself just stopping at them and staring. If I had the house to myself and the kids were at school or they were with the sitter, I would just scream at the pictures and stare at him. And the screaming, to me, it felt good, but I wasn't healing. I wasn't prospering. So I had to remove them. And like I said, through going on, I'm in year 3. I'm now able to, they're still down because I've moved forward. I'm trying to move forward, but I'm just now to a point where I can look at pictures of him. If someone shows me a picture, I can look at the picture without getting emotional or without feeling some sort of guilt or without getting sad. So I'm just at a point now where, okay, I can look at pictures. I can even talk about the picture, but this would not have happened 2 years ago. This would not have happened a year ago. I could not have done that at all. That would have set me back big time.
Wow.
But I think it's because, of course, I loved my husband. And I think that just knowing that we had those good times and now I don't have those good times to share with him, or I don't have him near me to reminisce about those good times. I think that was a little iceberg that I had, and that definitely halted me with healing and trying to move forward.
Yeah, no. And I mean, again, thank you for sharing those pieces, because I feel like I get a chance to get an insider's perspective to you all's life. I get a special pass to that. And in a lot of ways, it's very precious to me. So again, thank you for sharing that. A lot of ways I get a chance to put some of the pieces together that I wish I would have gotten a chance to participate in and see. And at the time where, and I remember getting the photos of your wedding day, and I still vividly remember those things. And forgive me if this causes, too much extra pain. I won't try to dwell on it too much. But wishing that I was able to be there during those moments as you guys built as a family. I think I was out of the country for several years during the time when your marriage was first in the beginning years and then moving forward. And I had just moved back into the States the last time I remember getting a chance to visit. And I remember getting a chance to sit down, and one of the the most memorable, and it really was the final conversation that we had together, he talked about you. He talked about, how great it would have been if you were at home, because I think you were at work at the time, and how similar the two of us were, and that we would really hit it off. And so for us to even be having this conversation right now, I feel like in some way is fulfilling something that he would have wanted. And, I'm trying not to be emotional about it as I think about the last conversation. I think about that time. But I just appreciate the moments that you did create. And I even appreciate the moments that you're sharing right now with me, because it's tremendous. It's a gift. And again, I commend you for even presenting that gift, because it's a very selfless way of you and who you are. And so anyway, as I try to, keep myself on track and straight through this, because this is, it touches the soul in a deep way. But you talked about some of those things, those challenges, right? Those big challenges that can be obstacles in a lot of ways to healing, and even just being able to process, because again, we know, wounds, especially when it comes to grief and loss, can be very deep. And maybe from your own personal perspective, because again, no one size fits all. This is my time where I'll stop and pause and say, if there's someone out there who is dealing with grief, no matter which area of the spectrum that you're on, seek the support and help that you need. Do not try to battle on your own. Do what you need to do that is healthy in the way that will give you, even in the hard days, give you some of that extra support, because it is necessary. Everyone, as was said, is going to be impacted differently. And so I really push anyone who's out there dealing, whatever your grief looks like, find that support. Don't try to do it on your own. And so anyway, I guess just really thinking about, what were some of those big challenges? And I know you said a few, but for you that really hindered processing and continuing to process all of this in a healthy way. Because it's a challenge, and even for your family, right? For your kids, what are some of those challenges? What are some of those hard points that, may unfortunately trigger the healing process, or trigger the hindrance of the healing process, I should say?
Yes. So triggers. So some things that I would do, I had to speak to a mental health provider, a counselor. I spoke to a spiritual person also pertaining to this. But some triggers that I did have, when people would say to me, "I'm sorry for your loss," that moved me in so many ways. So let me just rewind, if I can, for a little bit.
Yeah.
I found out that my husband passed away when I was leaving work one day.
Yeah.
And I was leaving work and I got the phone call, and from there, everything went blank. So I just remember someone taking my phone, picking me up off the floor, calling his mom, and trying to do the best to comfort me, praying over me. And that's what I remember. I remember my best friend came and comforted me, and I just wanted to be with my kids. I couldn't necessarily tell my kids right then and there. My oldest son was old enough to know. My younger two were babies. They had a babysitter. So I wasn't really worried about telling them. It was just my oldest son, because he was in elementary school. And it took days, because I wasn't right. I just was not right as a person. I couldn't accept to say those words, and I didn't know how to feel. So when I did tell him, that was the hardest thing that I've ever had to do in my life, was tell him, in addition to confirm with my stepson that this did take place. Everything else I feel like, I can handle, but those two things was difficult. It was very difficult to experience and go through.
Yeah.
So once the funeral, the viewing, once that had passed, life goes on. And that's the reality check that I didn't expect, that, tomorrow is still the next day. Bills are still due. Work is still there.
Yeah.
The world doesn't have pity and sympathy for you forever. It's just, okay, we're sorry, now keep moving. And luckily I had a great staff where I worked, and they gave me time off, indefinitely time off. And that was necessary. And I definitely think that was a helpful facet that I had because I needed that time to deal with myself and to heal. So when I did go back to work eventually, I did tell a friend, and she alerted personnel and let them know, her triggers. Please don't, make sure everyone treat her as normal when she returns to work. Don't treat me like I am this, you know, I am very sensitive, but don't make it obvious to me, please, if you can, that something tragic and something traumatic has happened to me. Try to keep it as normal as possible. And please don't say I'm sorry for your loss, because that's where I'm going to remember. And that's where I'm not 100% healed. And that's where I will lose it and I will get emotional. So if you can, not to do that. And that was my main trigger, was hearing those words, because it was acceptance. And, when you think about grief, especially when I think about grief on my end, I definitely went through the process. I went through the denial. I didn't believe that he passed away. Anger. And I think the anger part stayed with me for a very long time. And it's because I'm mad. I want to know why, what happened, what's going on. And, when you get into that situation, it's like you want to question God, but you can't. So you're upset because it's like, if I had $1 trillion, this is the one thing I want the answer to. I want to know, why. So you hold in that anger because you're hurt, you're upset, you're mad inside, and you just hold on to that. And it's just, and the thing with the denial and the anger, you get depressed, and then finally you get to the point where you accept. And I think once I accepted mentally that this is my new normal, this is my new life, this is what happened, I am doing this alone. And, my husband did pass away. Once I accepted that, and that took years, that took crying, screaming, blood, sweat, tears, but once I got to that, I was okay. Now, the very same thing is, just because I accepted it, with the grief cycle, it can be one day you're fine, the next day you're back in denial, or you're accepting, or you're angry. But once I finally, it clicked, once I definitely understood and definitely prayed about it and spoke to God about this journey, I've accepted. And once I accept it, it's like forgiveness. When you forgive someone, you can move on. So once I accept it, it's like, okay, now I can look at pictures of him. Oh, now I can tell a story about him. Now I can think of a memory that we had and laugh about it instead of cry. And if I do cry, it's happy tears, and it's thank you, God. I'm able to pray to God that I had the opportunity to have that moment with him, and that I shared that moment, and we had that moment together. So.
Oh man, Shagara, that's so rich and so deep. And I mean, just hearing you verbalize those things is doing something for me. And just understanding, I mean, I think you said it so eloquently, just thinking about that it's okay, one, that you had to wrestle with God and that you were angry and that you had these emotions, because I think a lot of times, especially within faith-based communities and within, those who are believers, it's very difficult to say, I'm angry, God. I'm angry at you, God. Why did this thing happen? And then even to come to that place of reconciliation with yourself, with the situation, with God, of saying, you know what, I have to forgive. And that's across the board, right? And it seems, oftentimes we think, who am I to say that I have to forgive God? But it's just, he's such a gracious father in that way. And he's so gracious with us and merciful with us, and saying, you know what, this isn't easy. And I understand, because, in his divine way, he went through it as a father who gave his only son for us. And so he gets it. He gets it. I'm sure God was angry too when he said I had to let go of my, my one and only son. And so for you to just be open about that, and even just being able to forgive in that way, whether it was, your husband for leaving you, in this very, a roundabout way, if you will, for God to that thought of, I'm going to blame him, or even for yourself of feeling angry and just saying, you know what, this is not what God wanted. So I let that go. This is not what I wanted. So I let this go. And I definitely know this is not necessarily what my husband wanted. So I have to let that go too. And even in that letting go, it's still that process. And so I think that was such a beautiful life lesson of that forgiveness piece. And that will probably look like many different things for many different people. But I appreciate you mentioning that. And I think also too, just you talking about what was a trigger for you. It's such a good reminder for, so again, for the listening audience who may not have dealt with grief in this way or loss in this way of a spouse or a loved one, just being mindful, be mindful of those words. Maybe even ask the person what would work best for you. Because I think a lot of times as human beings, we want so quickly to try to heal the hurt quickly. And, in previous episode, when we listened to Michelle Aiken, and she talked about the physical pains of things and how we often try to push past the pain, or we ignore the pain and we don't confront the situation, or we want a quick fix. And of course, who wouldn't want a quick fix, whether it's the physical pain or the soul pain? We want the pain to just go away, right? But just to say, you know what, I might have to just be silent for a little bit. I might just have to allow this person to feel some sense of normalcy, even though there might be this gaping hole that's there. And that's okay, because that's what that person needs right now. And so I think it's a challenge to all of us, even for myself as well. It's not to say that you never want sympathy, you never want someone to cry with, you never want support, but in the way that you need it, right? And sometimes that means, hey, can we just try to go on with life until I have a good place to even think about what loss means? So anyway, in all of that, and I know you had to take specific steps to get to that point, not only individually, but like you said, with a counselor. Are there other, key support or resources or even life tips that have helped you to date or continue to help you, or that helped you before, just in navigating the day to day and being able to explain some of these things, to your kids, and even being able to, help yourself as you go through the ebbs and flows of this entire process?
Yes, absolutely. And, I definitely appreciate all of the love and the support that was received. And as you mentioned, people want to just fix the problem and fix it and heal. And some of the things that can be done when you are with someone experiencing grief, um, because I know we don't know what to say and we want to just heal and solve the problem quickly. Let them know, just, I'm here for you. I'm here.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
um, some things that helped me drastically. She Friends calling, Shagara, do you need me to take the kids to McDonald's?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Oh, those that right there was big.
Yeah.
That's that's the stuff that is needed. But I do want widowers to know, when it comes to the steps and some things that I did and some coping, that first and foremost, I wish I would have known this, that it is 100% okay with not being okay.
Mm-hmm.
It is okay. Take your time and do everything at your own pace. Tomorrow is not promised. We don't know what's going on. It's okay not being okay.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I can recall maybe the second day, or my days ran together. We're in Florida and it's 100-degree weather. I
Mm-hmm.
remember walking outside with a sweatshirt on, and
Mm-hmm.
no one knew. My neighbors, they saw me and they just, I guess, knew that something did not look right. And the neighbor across the street ran to me and just saw the look in my eye and just hugged me and
Mm-hmm.
told me something. He said, I know, basically, I can tell that you're going through something. And I finally broke it down to him. And, you know, the being there, the hug, the support,
Mm-hmm.
that's what I needed at that time. So,
Yeah.
you don't necessarily have to say the words or know what to say, just being there for that person, or saying, I'm here for you.
Yeah.
And letting them know that it's okay not to not be okay. Definitely take one step at a time, second by second.
Yeah.
Um, I have children, and a famous childhood movie is Finding Nemo. And the
Mm-hmm.
quote that resonated with me, as cliche as it may sound, is when the father told Nemo, when Dory told Nemo, just keep swimming, just keep swimming.
Mm-hmm.
I had to tell myself, just keep swimming,
Wow.
just keep going, take that left step, right
Mm-hmm.
foot, one step at a time.
Yeah.
Do not try to overwhelm yourself, because now you are a new person. you are not the old you that you once were.
Yeah.
Your life has changed and you're not the same person, but you're still living the life that you had,
Yeah.
even though you're someone else. And that is the hardest. That's very difficult to do,
Yeah.
especially if you're trying to do it with a straight face or not. But you have to remind yourself to keep swimming. Once everything first happened, it took a day or two for me to physically get myself in the shower and shower. That seemed impossible. I didn't eat. I couldn't. I didn't have an appetite. Food disgusted me. So when I ate 2 meals a day, that was a big celebration. And when I say 2 meals, these are not even kids' meals. These are bite-sized meals.
Yeah.
I checked the mail. That was a big accomplishment. And, when friends would call and I'm just like, oh, I checked the mail. That's all I could do,
Yeah.
And when they would call, and even when you would call, you didn't know this, but you were on mute so many times while I was screaming, crying. I was the queen of putting people on mute and crying and crying and crying. And that was a part of my one step at a time, day by day, left foot, right foot. And I think to myself, I am a person who wants to be happy. Even when I'm sad, I want to be happy. But if you find yourself, if something comes to your mind, it's okay to smile. It's okay to laugh. It doesn't mean that you're healed. It doesn't mean you don't miss that person. It doesn't mean that you're not hurting. And I have to tell this to my oldest, that just because you're smiling or just because you laughed at something, it doesn't mean you don't miss daddy. It doesn't mean that I don't miss my husband. It doesn't mean that I don't still think about him. It's just I'm living for that moment. And at that moment, something made me smile. Nature made me happy, or, something happened, or I had a memory, or something that I saw or listened to made me smile. Take that moment and laugh, because it can be such great medicine for your body, for your spirit. Another thing is definitely, as you mentioned, support. You have to surround yourself with positive energy and positive support, because it's beneficial to move forward throughout this grieving period. I know I had mental health. I went and spoke to a counselor. I believe at first it was twice a week. Because I was just in that much shock. I could not fathom what took place or what happened. And I was traumatized. I also had a spiritual counselor to help me understand what he was going through on the spiritual side, because I was still holding on to him as if he was still here. And I had to learn how to release him to God and understand that he is okay where he is at. He's in a better place than I am. I had to accept, and I had to understand, and I had to learn this. And this didn't take place in 3 months or a month. This was continuous, because I was still in denial. I didn't believe it. I just, it was just hard for me to accept it and get it through. And, by all means, this isn't easy. It takes time. Everything takes time, because as I mentioned, you are living your old life, but you're a new person. And I wish I can be that girl that I once was 3.5 years ago. But unfortunately, I won't. That's not me. I'm in this new journey, this new chapter, this new book, this new novel, this new series in a new language. And this is the life that I'm living. So once, like I said, once I accept it, and once I used to help provide it and realize it's okay to not be okay, take a step at a time, and just, take a moment and understand that this isn't easy, and not, give myself some grace, basically. That's when I was able to start the healing process.
Yeah. No, gosh, oh man, there's just so much wrapped up in all of that. And I literally feel as if your words are healing to me. And just, it's reassuring to me to know, I know that my brother picked the right person when he did, because I'm all I can say is I'm proud of you. Like, that's all. Those are only the words that I have, just to know that even in this, how you have handled it. And again, I know it wasn't a skip and a jump, and it's still not that. And it's not that at all. But just to hear hear you and hear how you've processed, and to know that this can be a support for someone else. Because again, we know there's no one size fits all. There's no,
Right.
My journey is going to be just like yours, and just follow these steps and everything will be great. But just to have one more person that says, you know what, I see you. I know and may feel some of the things that you're feeling. And I know that I have been able to just keep swimming, right? I've been able to I've been able to take some steps, and here I am, even in those steps. And so I commend you for sharing this, for being bold, for being courageous in this, and just for being open. It's such a gift. It's such a rich gift. And I wholeheartedly pray that God just blesses you tremendously for the gift that you are and that you continue to be for so many people. And so anyway, I literally could go on and on just listening and processing and sharing, but I definitely don't want to push too much. But at the very least, I want people to know that there's a way that they can hear more from you, because one of those healing pieces that you did, which I think prompted our first conversation, was that you've started a podcast on this. So, in these last few minutes of our time together, I want to hear about that. Share that. And especially for those that are listening that say, you know what, I just need to connect with someone else's voice who gets where I am. Maybe you can share about this blossoming podcast that you have going on.
Yes, thank you. Okay, so throughout this journey, you have to find things to help you cope and some things to help you heal. And it can be journaling, exercising. Well, one thing that I chose to do was create a podcast. I created a podcast called the Melanin Widow. And the purpose of Melanin Widow is to not only heal myself, but to explain and express to others what it's like going through the grief and the loss of a loved one, such as especially your husband or spouse, and to provide support and strength and encouragement for many women and men, especially throughout the African American and minority communities, because I feel as if our grieving is a little bit different than what society labels grief and loss. With my podcast, many people have support and some don't, but how society normalizes grief is not what it looks like for minorities and African Americans. We are not mentioned, we're not really viewed, and we don't really have a voice. So I wanted to create a podcast as a spot to provide that encouragement and support for those that are grieving, that look like me, that may sound like me, or that may experience this loss similar to mine. Now as a single parent, I have to repurpose my brain as raising children alone. So now what does that look like? One of my podcasts, I talk about now what, and it's titled Now What, and it helps you process the day two. Now what happens next? What am I supposed to do? No one ever told me that I had to follow this guideline, or I have to do this, or I have to do that. Now what? So I feel as if that the podcast can definitely be there as a supporting tool for those that are grieving.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for even doing that and putting those words together. And we'll definitely have a link to that podcast in the show notes. So, again, just make sure that you connect. Make sure that you connect, even if it's just your step one, right? Even if it's just your step one to say, I need to connect to someone. So give the title of that podcast one more time for our listening audience, Shagara.
Okay, the title of the podcast is Melanin Widow. Okay. You can also find that on Apple Podcasts under the Melanin Widow. It's, I believe, on Spotify also. And I have a page on Instagram, Melanin Widow _.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I'm going to literally cherish this entire episode for a long time. Thank you for being transparent. Thank you for being open. Thank you for being willing. And for everyone, again, out there who is listening, thank you for being willing to journey with this, in this topic with us. And again, I just encourage you to find that support, to find those folks around you. And if you needed a reminder, just keep swimming. So Shagara, thank you so much. This was another episode of Montalvo International Women in Life and Leadership, where the real mission about this is for your will and my will to match up with his will, even in those tough times. You were listening to Shagara. She has been such an amazing support for so many people through her voice and through her story. So I encourage you, listen to this episode again and again. This has been a part of that series of the mind, body, and soul, and this is definitely touching on those soul and deep spirit issues. I pray that you find the healing that you need every step of the way, and I commend you for taking one more step. So stay tuned for future episodes coming down the pipeline. We're so thankful that you've decided to tune in, and we look forward for the amazing ways that you stay inspired. All right, take care.